Now, welcome along. So we are at semi-final stages this weekend. On Saturday, it's 5 o'clock throw-in, Kerry against Tyrone. And then on Sunday, edging towards a sellout, by the way, Meath against Donegal, and that is 4 o'clock. So we're hoping this brilliant football season continues. Just to mention, by the way, so we're having our little gathering on the 4th floor here at Independent House on Wednesday next week. Next week's busy. Portrush Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday. Our panel is going to be John Milan, Pat Spillane, Eddie Brennan and Joe Brawley together for about an hour and a half. We'll hit record. We'll see what happens. That's kind of it, really.
Look with that, Joe.
A lot of enthusiasm at that type, isn't there?
Anything could happen. So I was just putting the shout out. Obviously, we're completely full up, so everyone, the spots filled up quickly. But might do a little quick fire section. So your emails, your questions. I don't want like an essay kind of thing. Just more quick fire. Best player you played against type thing. Who is the greatest pundit on television today? That kind of thing. Indosport Podcast at independent.ie. And that way, if you ask a kind of juicy question, I don't get the blame. That's the thinking here. So get creative. Conor McKeon, you're very welcome. Hello.
Thanks, Joe.
Tomás O'Shea, any questions you want to put to our panel there? That we can put to them on air?
I could think of a few to ask Joe Brawley, but I'll text it to Joe.
All right, okay. Our GA coverage as ever with thanks to AIB. They're across club and county, and in 2025 they're celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. This year obviously has been so good, and they're more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. Check out #TheToughest for more. By the way, is it a surprise or odd that Paddy Tally, after 8 short months, has left Derry, Tyrone native, failed to win a game? Obviously joined late, so I kind of thought, well, he'll certainly give that another shot, and seems to have walked out.
No, it's not a strange one, but I think a lot of the writing seemed to be on the wall from kind of the middle of the summer. The noises were that the players don't really seem to have settled on, managements in the post-Rory Gallagher era, and
they just don't like Tyrone people coming in.
Maybe that's what it is, but like on a broader point about Derry, for such a good group of players, they've lost a couple of years now at a point when they were only going one direction, and they've gone very much backwards. And those big players, your Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers and these fellas, they're not going to sort of be as young and effective forever. So they kind of need to get this next one right, because as a group of players, they're capable of, well, we've seen what they're capable of. They were only really on the precipice of it, but it goes to show you how disruptive it can be when a manager that the players obviously had no problem with from a football tactical point of view kind of all of a sudden goes. It is a case of almost the carpet being swept from underneath you.
Yeah. Last year's a good word for it, Tomás, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with Conor there. It seems to be that they got the taste for Rory Gallagher, and nobody seems to be able to match what he brought to the table. And I know that ship has probably sailed, but they're as strong as anybody else at underage in the country. They have players coming through. They have a strong group that's there at the minute. They probably think that they should be achieving a lot more than they are, but given the last 2 years and the performances that they've given, there's a lot of room for improvement, I think. But yeah, it is. I think it's actually very strange. I think Cavan changed up manager, but he left after 2 years. 2 years would probably be the minimum inter-county managers would do. So I definitely thought Paddy Tally would stay more than a year. But at the same time, I just feel, and if I feel it, then Paddy Tally must be feeling it, that they're not. They still want somebody different.
Yeah. No, it feels that way. They haven't got over the breakup of Rory Gallagher's departure yet.
Lots of big empty seats.
Yeah, Mayo job. Yeah,
lots of big empty seats.
Which one you eyeing up, Tomás? Would you go Mayo or would you go Tyrone?
Mayo or Tyrone?
Sorry, not Tyrone. Excuse me, Derry. There's no vacancy in Tyrone.
Oh, Jesus, Joe, I drove up to Derry lately, not a hope.
All right, Mayo it is. You
have to go.
That's our headline. That's fine. Don't clarify. By the way, in more stable news, Oisin McConville has committed to 2 more years with Wicklow. There was a bit of speculation. Someone's going to come in for Oisin, but he's staying with Wicklow for the next 2 years. Now let's talk Kerry-Tyrone. I don't want to trigger some kind of PTSD for you, Tomás, but it's hard kind of not to revisit the noughties just briefly if we can. So to remind people, I know I don't need to remind you, 03, 05 and 08 loom large when you think of Kerry-Tyrone in these years. The 03 semi-final went Tyrone's way. The 05 All-Ireland final went Tyrone's way, and the 08 All-Ireland final went Tyrone's way. So that's, you've done fine, by the way. Your career is amazing, but probably 3 All-Irelands more wouldn't have hurt. I had forgotten, by the way, the 03 semi-final. I just double-checked the scoreline. It's 13 points to 6. This should have prompted the FRC 22 years ago. So this, I just so low scoring. 13 points to 6, 73 frees in total, and remembered as one of the great ambushes.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. My memory is sketchy at best, but I do remember we didn't expect them to. They didn't play orthodox positions as such. No, they didn't play anything like that's been played in the last 7 or 8 years either. And that has to be like that Tyrone team played unbelievable football. That Tyrone team was stacked. They had strong bench, but they had unbelievable forwards. They had a bit of toughness there with Hub Hughes around the middle of the field, and their defence was really, really solid. It wasn't that stage. The clocks didn't kick out, hadn't started, so they were booming out the middle that time as well. But whatever it is, I was listening to Peter Canavan lately. I think they were the team that changed every time Tyrone used to come south. However well they did above in the north, they just timidly kind of lie down and let Dublin and Kerry do as they will. Um, and I think that was the first team, that 0-3 team under Mickey Hart, that came down and said, no, we'll be having this and we'll do it our way. And we have the footballers, and I think that's the key thing. They had the footballers to do it.
Yeah.
And whatever then you talk 2005, 2008, you look back, I even remember one year thinking, right, they weren't going as well. But whatever it was with a green and gold jersey, and I think it was out of respect in a twisted way. They respected Kerry and their history, and I'd say that 70s, 80s team going up, a lot of those, that vintage would have left marks on Tyrone in a good way. They admired them, but they upped their game for Kerry every time, like. So 08. Geez, the 3 times they caught us, it was the one blip. Everybody else we looked after at some stage along the way, but they were the one constant that we couldn't. And I think we played them towards the end of my career anyway in Killarney in Championship, but most of the 5 or 6 of their main men were gone at that stage. But I'll argue, and we came across the Galways, the Meaths, the Armaghs. They had the best forward line of the lot of them, best forward line. And they had it in buckets too.
Yeah. Who did you tend to mark in those games? Can you remember?
I marked a few. I marked my names. I marked a fella there, and oh Jesus, it wasn't supposed to be hectic, and I was trying to focus on other stuff. Fucking, he was hectic after 20 minutes. The same. He was from the Moy. What's his name again? It'll come to me in a second.
Yeah. It's okay.
But I picked up McGuigan at different times. I picked up Cavan. Cavan tended to go to half forward, but it didn't matter who you were on. Like, it was just constant. Like, there was a problem. It's like that game. You hammer down the little heads. One head would pop up somewhere else. Like Dooher was outstanding that time as well. You know. And they had their Philly Jordans coming from the back as well. So they ticked every box, to be fair to them.
Yeah. And, like there's a famous picture, and sometimes pictures are deceiving, but I think it is reflective of the game. Famous picture of Dara surrounded by about 25 of them at one stage. Did they bring kind of like an intensity and a freneticism on top of the brilliant football and everything else? But was there something about the way they just had numbers and like kind of ravenous? Was that a different level to what you'd faced at that time before?
Was it Maradona faced the Belgians? He danced around.
The other photo. Now that one's deceptive.
Our fella wasn't too.
The Maradona one is deceptive because there's just been a free kick and the wall has broken off, so it looks
I know.
But Dara, I think, actually was surrounded.
No, I think what they did, they knew they knew our big boys, and that clip went on for about 20-25 seconds. But it wasn't like we weren't coached, we weren't coached to have that swarm. We weren't used to it. Like, I'm sure if we gave a simple hand pass backwards and then one kick to the left, there had to be oceans of space. But they just chased and harried, and it was very claustrophobic, yeah. No, that was around the middle, Joe. They weren't dropping 14 men back by any means. Like, Donegal were the first team that I felt did that. That my man was just sprinting to the 13-yard line. I said, Jesus, what's going on here? Tyrone boys didn't. The Tyrone boys were orthodox enough, but by God did they work back and work hard. But they came back up the pitch again straight away after. They weren't playing sweepers. But that was, I'd say, the really, really first time that claustrophobic tackling, and they went after the big fellas. Do you know?
There's one of Owen Brosnan as well, isn't there? Brosnan's coming out with the ball, and there's about 4 Tyrone guys around him, and you can tell that all he has ever done in his whole life is put the shoulder down and burrow his way past. And what's mad about it, like Tomás says there, is that was seen or interpreted as the birth of really defensive football. But you had 4 players pressing a player that was in his own right half back position. So they had 4 players putting pressure on the ball up in their left half forward position, which would be thrilling now to watch, because obviously the space then is in miles and behind. So it's funny how things are interpreted at the time, because it was such a breakaway from man-on-man football. The gig then was you go past your man, you put him out of the way, you do whatever you do, and then it opens up for you, whereas Tyrone changed it. But there's an interesting passage in Jack O'Connor's book when he talks about one of the moments in that game when Dara comes down with the ball and he's moving forward, and Dooher stops him, and he calls Dara are far larger, and Dooher is not anywhere near the same dimensions as him. But he said the big difference was footballers to then were coached that when you engage, you're trying to get the ball off him. But he said Dooher didn't do that. What he did was he stopped him with his upper body, and that was the first part of the Tyrone method of tackling. Was first of all, you stop the man, and then we get bodies around. And this sounds so basic now, but it was revolutionary at the time.
Yeah. Was it spiky enough verbals between the two teams, Tomás, or what was the relationship?
Jeez, it wasn't good, I'd say, but we didn't come across them. Thanks be to God, they were far up the other side of the country. We didn't cross paths that often, but there wasn't. I remember I went on an Aussie Rules trip in 2005. And I contemplated the night before not bothering going because I'd have to face those fellas. A true story. And I purposely left Kerry. We were pulling out of Dublin Airport early the following morning, and I said, I'll land in here now around 12, half 12. There'll be nobody up. Get in. I'll face them tomorrow. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And the fucking elevator opened, and there was Ryan McManaman inside in the fucking elevator. And I'll tell you, Joe, I went out and geez, I tell you, even today, brilliant characters, all of them. I had a great trip. McManaman, one of the soundest lads you'd ever meet. They had no chip on their shoulder. They had no take us as you find us kind of a thing. And they enjoyed the fun. They enjoyed the crack. They had the balance right. Great competitors. But back then, during those matches, yeah, there was a lot of verbals. I didn't come across a lot of verbals, but there was. They had players that would, like I think there was one year where Gooch got clipped by the goalie, I think, or something happened, and we were actually getting saucy with our own lads at halftime, saying, "What the hell were you at there? Like, why didn't she step in, or why didn't she, just lay down a marker or something like?" But they were tough, they were hard, they were physical, but then they had that silk, like, O'Neill, Canavan, Muggsy, Jesus, they were unreal.
Yeah, that's a pretty complete team, isn't it?
Yeah, the one that and maybe it's because we saw less and less of him after 03, although he was still around in 08, but like McGuigan was just incredible. Like that position of the old centre half forward doesn't really exist anymore. But he was the ultimate link man, because he could take the ball out in front and then he could do whatever he wanted. He could spray it inside, he could go past his man, and he had that real kind of they were audacious Tyrone as well, they had no sense of their own limitations, or even that they should have some. And he was just an absolute Rolls Royce of a centre forward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Saturday then, because it's going to be such a great game. Now, I'm worried for Kerry, because here's Paul Brennan in the Kerry man, Monday this week, 4 o'clock, Jack O'Connor arrives into Austin Stack Park. Paul writes, he eased himself into a chair and then he cheerily assured the assembled media there would be, quote, no rant this afternoon. And I thought, they've gone soft. I don't want Jack O'Connor happy, Tomás. I need him spiky. I need him angry.
He's probably giving out about something down there.
So that was, he sat down, all good form, and what he was saying about the game was, I consider Tyrone to be very, very dangerous because there is not much talk about them. Huge amount of talk about our game against Armagh. I would never underestimate Tyrone, and I've good reason not to. I'll be honest though, up to this week, I haven't really been taking a whole pile of notice of them because of the fact we've had our own hands full. And then he says things about Tyrone which won't surprise anyone. Traditionally, very, very good defensively. They're a very good counter-attacking team, so we'll need to be good with the ball. We need to move it smart. We can't take it into contact and stuff like that. They have a lot of weapons, serious weapons, starting with the goalkeeper, big mobile midfield, obviously some very sharp forwards, good defensive system. So there isn't too much more left out there. We're under no illusions. This is going to be a tougher game than Armagh in many ways. And off he went to training. So that was the word from Jack O'Connor. We'll come to Kerry, obviously, because we always do. But I don't really know. I don't have a strong sense of Armagh, of Tyrone, Conor.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I don't know that they've any immediately defining traits. I think we'd always associate Tyrone as being, the lads with the beards or whatever it is, And I'm not sure that they're stylistically particularly different from any of the other top teams that are out there. A couple of interesting players. I felt after 2021 that Con Kilpatrick and Brian Kennedy were a real kind of makeshift old school midfield pairing that maybe wouldn't last the pace in the long term, but they've come back into significance or importance now, particularly marking the opposition kick out. And I think this would be a big thing this weekend because Dublin's kick out the last day, Dublin's kick-out strategy this year wasn't very complex. They spread out as far as they could, and Cluxton would just pick whichever matchup that he fancied the most. But people like Peadar O'Cuffey-Byrne and Brian Howard, who were gathering kick-outs in the earlier games, Kilpatrick and Kennedy were all over them. And for big men, it's much easier to defend, to stop your opposition winning their own kick-out than to win your own. And that's going to be a big thing because that press that Kerry got on Armagh the last day, it was so suffocating. Like it really makes it look like the team doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing next. And the ability to win a kick out cleanly is so key there, and whether that's on breaking ball or in the air. Morgan has the length. He can obviously kick out over all the press, but you're going to give the ball away unless you're kicking to a target. So that's just one of the sort of things about this Tyrone team that struck me, is that midfield pairing has survived from 4 years ago when they won that kind of surprise All-Ireland. And obviously all the attack, like they have serious inside forwards, like proper snipers, like people who you would nearly leave in the old game as one man inside forward line and just kick the ball into them. I'm not sure Derek Canavan has been as good as we expected this summer since he had that concussion. But obviously McElhone came on the last day when the game was broken up in Dublin and we're under pressure and there was loads of space and there was opportunities for one-on-one. And Rory Canavan as well can do the same thing. So like they're seriously dangerous. I think they're a far better team maybe than, they were relegated obviously this year and didn't win an Ulster title, but I think they're serious opponents this weekend for Kerry.
Yeah, like against Dublin, I'd sort of imagined if Dublin were going to lose that game, it'd be that manic Tyrone intensity that that we just talked about. But Dublin actually kind of dominated's too strong, but like we're in control of possession a lot and won plenty of breaking ball and weren't like overawed or outworked by Tyrone in that respect. And then Tyrone 2-pointers sort of kept them in the game in a big way. Like they were kind of 6-2 up early on with just 3 2-pointers and they built on that. Dublin had a lot of wides. It was kind of talked as a lower quality game. Tomás, McCurry, Canavan quiet. So I don't know. They weren't great the last day, but like then again, it's a good sign if you weren't great and you beat Dublin Croke Park.
Yeah, I don't. I thought was it against Armagh that Dublin created an amount of chances and didn't take them, and then something similar happened. They corrected that the following day. They went out.
against
I
Cork.
forget
Yeah,
who they played.
Cork.
The
Cork.
Cork. They corrected that, and then they created X amount of chances again the last day, which is a worry for Tyrone. 100%. I touch on what Connor said there about that press. Like, if you're sitting in a Tyrone seat there, you got a full on view of Kerry at their best. So you got a full on view of what they're going to have to deal with if it is a case that Kerry come at you. Like, for the first time in a long, long time, I counted 7, 8 different players who created one-on-ones and went for it. Brian Begley got 2 points. Gavin White got 2 points. You had Joe O'Connor bombed in at the start of the second half, got a point. Throughout the game, Shawnee set the template for it, but it was the first time, like, I saw Thomas Sullivan come up the field and he goes sideways and he goes back. Like, be direct, take your man on, create that space. Armagh had a man dropped, which was, in hindsight, a mistake, but nobody was expecting Kerry to attack with the ferocity and the one-on-one as they did. So they got Paddy and David Clifford. They were outstanding. Everybody's comparing David to 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, where he was on a different planet altogether, but he's still having huge games. They got a picture of how Kerry are pressing on kickouts, and if you were, I still, lads, I still can't figure out Armagh, they were going with these three-quarter ones, and he persisted with them. He should, whatever chance you'd have, if you're there on the sideline, and if every alternative's taken from you, you have to go along. You have to go along, as in out past the middle if you can. I think I'd be very surprised if Tyrone don't have a plan A, B. And if you go along and you succeed, then you get into the opposition head and they'll start thinking, right, Christ, we have to actually back off here a small bit, and then you start getting more kickouts off. But it would surprise me if Kerry get as much time on the ball outside that middle third as they did. It'll surprise me if they don't man mark Shawnee, Paddy, and David Clifford, which means that they'll go orthodox in terms of defence and try to squeeze across as much as they can. It would surprise me if they didn't have a good enough plan around the middle of the park in terms of kickouts. And inevitably, lads, before the Kerry game, I genuinely didn't think, with Mark O'Shea and Sean O'Brien starting at midfield, because Joe started at wing forward, I thought, Jesus Christ, we're in bother here. We're not. And the lads did absolutely very well.
Yeah.
They did their part. They smashed ball. They crashed into fellas. They made it awkward. It was the guys on the ground. Like, it's. I think Cluxon changed football in that, on his own, the boys made space and all that. But because of this arc, it's now a goalie's job to put it in the correct area. It's the midfielder's job to go up, A, to catch it, or B, to break it. So you have the high fielding, but you also have the breaking ball merchants back into it again. And I hate saying it because it's the easy option every time, but so much of this game will depend on who wins most of the ball in the middle of the park. And if Kerry win enough ball, with Paul Ganey potentially coming back, I think I might be completely wrong. I don't see Tyrone holding them if they win enough ball in the middle of the park.
Yeah. I know we've been saying it all year, but it does feel kind of old school analysis, and you kind of got it. There's going to be more to it than that, but like, it's a big part of the game again.
Like, even a lot of the wisdom about trying to keep Kerry quiet going into the Armagh game was to stop them scoring goals, because I think they scored 30 goals in 14 league and championship games. And they'd obviously gotten an awful lot of energy from that. And then you see Tyrone defending inside the arc, and Kerry didn't score a goal the last day, but they scored 31 points because they were able to kick the ball over from 2 point range without anybody putting pressure on the ball. So, I mean, there's another mistake that Armagh made that Tyrone will have to learn from. Now, does that mean that if you step up on Shawnee O'Shea or whoever is out there, you're leaving space inside for a Paul Gini or whoever is making the run? That's the trade-off that you're going to have to make.
And that's the Jim Gavin dream. You know, he sort of hopes it's a bad choice or a worse choice. But I like, to Tomás's point, the big benefit for Tyrone here is they have the Armagh game to look at in a way that Armagh just didn't. You just know Armagh did not sense Shawnee O'Shea was going to be in that kind of form. They didn't, O'Buglock and Gavin White, you just didn't see them rampaging forward in that way. The kick out press, like that is the low hanging fruit here for Tyrone. If, management are on the ball, and you suspect they are, they've got a great game plan to look at now. Like, O'Shea will be tagged. half back line tagged. Clifford's Clifford. That's well signposted. They know Paudie's on form. They'll have a good look. They'll be able to think in the calm of a dressing room. What do we do if Kerry win 4 of our kickouts in a row?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tyrone this weekend and teams going forward, particularly teams like Donegal, Tyrone, and Monaghan, who have the longest kickouts in the game. That what you're doing is you're actually positioning your 2 kickout targets, in this case Kennedy and Kilpatrick, as the 2 furthest guys forward, because it means that you have everybody behind the ball if you don't win it.
You're set.
And if you do win it, you at least have pace coming onto it.
Yeah.
Because you just can't give away those mid-range kickouts. It's everything goes to pot because your entire formation is already set up kind of on the half turn. You're facing the wrong direction if you lose it. And, teams are so good at moving the ball now to the spare man when they have it, that if you're in that scramble defence where everyone's kind of running back and herring back and they don't know who they're taking or where the ball's going to go, you're dead, And that's where Kerry turned the screw on Armagh the last day.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it's all laid out. It feels like David, I was going to say Clifford, but Paudie was brilliant as well. It feels, Tomás, we talked about him a bit before the Armagh game, and he was brilliant and came into it as the game went on, especially. But he was good all the way through. He's really cooking again, and I'd say these new rules, he must just feel better about the game more than most, and the treatment he's getting. Because now he has a bit of space again. I wonder if almost part of the head almost dropped a touch at times the last couple of years, thinking, God, this game, I'm just surrounded by 10 of them. Whereas he just looks rejuvenated. He looks really, really good.
I think he's playing very well, very, very well. Even the games that Kerry weren't going well, if you were feeding him the ball, he was still doing really well. I'm thinking of the Cork games. I'm thinking even of the Meath game, would you believe? If you give him enough of the ball and give it to him early and give it to him in any form, even if he's coming off it, he can hurt you from any place. He can run at you. He can kick from distance. He can kick off both feet. He can win his own ball. I did the Sunday game. I said this maybe already with Chris McKeon.
Yeah.
And he just said, Jesus, he says, I marked him and I just saw him coming in. He says, I did not realise how big a man he was like. And I do think he has that space now. But I also think that there's a lot more of them playing well, better maybe than they were last year. And the way I'm talking now, Joe, it's kind of made up for a sucker punch from Tyrone. And this is the challenge that Kerry face coming into the weekend. Every single person will probably tip Kerry to win this based on what they saw. But if you go back 3 weeks, just 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, Kerry were in the doldrums in terms of fellas were not happy with them. Their confidence wasn't going. They needed a spark. But he's been a constant spark for them all year long, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I would argue, Hampsey has done well on him down the years. Traditionally, Teague marked him in the league, if I'm not mistaken. But they also have to worry now about Shawnee Shea. They also have to worry about Paudie Clifford. They also have to worry about Paul Ganey if he plays. So they have enough fires to be putting out, as well as Kerry on the other side with McCurry and Canavan.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, that if Kerry win enough possession around the middle, could you see, I saw them in the league above, and right by right, Tyrone should have nailed them to the wall in the league above there. They didn't. They weren't able to. Now, I think Dave Clifford kicked 3 goals the same day.
Yeah.
So he'll definitely take up time inside in their heads, definitely. But he's more than comfortable of taking his time getting into the game. He's confident. He doesn't have to shoot the lights out in the first 10 minutes. He'll work his way into the game. He'll create for others. He'll know the spotlight will be on him. Tyrone, more than any other county, maybe Donegal aside, are unreal at swarming players.
True.
And once one fella slows him down, as Conor said before, and then getting the 2 or 3 in. But what surprised me the last day, because of the amount of time he missed, was Paudie Clifford came in and he was on as much ball as some of the lads that had played a full game. He's just hungry for it, and he looked sharp, and he looked on the ball. But again, Tyrone love a challenge like that, and they will come down and they don't care who they face or what they face. They'll throw everything on Tyrone. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. If you're Jack Connor and you're looking at Canavan, McCurry, Hart Donnelly, I suppose, up front, why not throw McElhone in? I think he's primed for it. I know you're taking away from the strength of their bench. I get that. But he's got Geez, I've seen enough of him now at the 20s last 2 years. He has a confidence that can do damage, and age has nothing to do with it. He took on, I think, Kilkenny the last actually, and just
Oh,
bounced around him,
yeah.
took him on, bang over the bar, didn't look sideways coming out, getting ready for the next ball. He did the same against Armagh in the championship above this year, and he's only been coming in because of the fact that he was involved with the 20s. So they could or should spring him, and it would rattle Kerry in that now they have another fire to put out somewhere, so they have to do a man marking job on him as well. But I think Kerry are capable of that. I think they're defending a lot better this year than they did last year.
Hmm.
Well, I was only having this conversation up on the desk 20 minutes before we came in here. It is the big sort of variable that Tyrone, Malachy O'Rourke could throw at this game. It's an ace in the back pocket, and I suppose if you lose, no matter how you use them, you'll probably have gotten it wrong. But I can definitely understand. If you're doing if you're doing your markers, say you're doing your matchups in that situation, and you don't figure in Home, and then all of a sudden he appears in the pitch.
Sure.
Either you have to give your fourth or fifth best man marker the job of marking him, or you have to rejig everything else.
Yeah.
So I just think even that kind of element of surprise could make it.
An old dummy team as well. Yeah. So, well, final thoughts on the game. Look, it's hard not to tip Kerry, whilst allowing for the possibility of Tyrone doing what they do. And I suppose one of the strongest arguments you can make is, as we've mentioned, they have the Armagh tape to look back on. That gives that there's a lot there to pore over, and you can forget with the Armagh game. Armagh were 5 points ahead before as good a 15 minutes as we've ever seen. Now, can Kerry hit those heights? Like, will Kerry ever have a 15-minute period like that again? I don't think so. And so, that's kind of worth bearing in mind. Like, it was really extraordinary. And yet, just Kerry by dint of having better players. Kerry. You're Kerry?
I'm Kerry, yeah.
Yeah. Tomás, you're Kerry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Donegal Meath. I have seen several people use the phrase this week. For Meath, read the Dublin Hurlers.
No, I don't think that's fair. I think Meath are much.
Well, no one says that. No one can concede 7 goals. But, like,
No, the only thing I'd say about this game and Donegal in particular is I left Croke Park on Saturday night of the quarterfinals and said we won't see a better second half, or we won't see a better half of football than Donegal produced against Monaghan.
Yeah.
And by Monday it was all over because Kerry had completely, they dominated the weekend because they were so good. But I think was it Donegal scored 123 from 24 scoring chances, or 124 from 23 scoring chances, including the 2-pointers, and they'd only 3 wides. So they were exceptional in that second half. And this was after the 6-day turnaround, playing their third week in a row. So that's the level that they're at.
Yeah.
And when they got on top of Monaghan, like they vaporised Monaghan.
It seems their physicality is just frightening everyone. So Ger Brennan, you used the word sprintability. And then Robbie Brennan said, I'm not saying you absolutely know what Donegal are going to do, but you have a fair idea of what they're going to do. Whether you can stop them or not is another thing. Their running game is exceptional, and talked about how Croke Park is just made for them. So it seems like everyone who comes up against them, Tomás, kind of at the forefront of their minds is not like working out what they're going to do. It's just don't really have the horses to compete with you guys physically as much as anything.
Yeah, I've been doing a pile of thinking about this. Like Meath, and maybe Conor would have more of an insight. Jesus Christ! Like in a year that this transformation, similar players, same group. I know they brought Brian Menton back. I know there was an X amount of younger players, a year older, etc. But they're playing with a confidence. They're playing. There's a togetherness there. There's a kind of say what you like on the outside. We'll drive on and we'll do our own thing and we'll back the way we want to play. We'll defend hard in numbers. We'll compete around the middle of the park. We'll be direct and we'll take fellas on up front. We don't have a bad bench, even though we've a lot of injuries. And I'm saying, like I made a point to a guy today that if you look at Louth, and don't get me wrong, a Leinster Championship for Meath right now would do wonders, and they'd all probably swap it for it. But us on the outside looking in will probably look at the year and say, after this season, who are in a better position, Louth or Meath? And probably Meath, probably with what they can build on going forward, and they will have to. You see, if you were in Meath's boots, and this is Donegal are such a strong running team. Do you take the risk of giving them possession, or, and here we are talking about midfield again, do you lock on and try to do to Patton? Now you probably won't do it to the same level. If Rafferty can be got at, Patton can be got at, and I saw him being got at a couple of times already this year. And I think Meath are a confident enough team to actually do that. Um, I watched obviously the Meath game the last day, and they were missing an awful lot in the first half. They were creating chances, they were being direct, they were kicking the ball, they were showing the amount of movement up front was impressive. But in the second half, I don't know who said it after the game, we just said stick to the plan, and just the scores came that little bit freer in the second half. I think the conundrum for Meath is what do they do with the kickouts? Will they rack up and hard as they can, or will they leave Donegal off? Donegal's game, Joe, and again, fellas will think I against Monaghan in the quarter final. First, Donegal got a ball. I don't know if you remember it, and they lamped it. Just do you remember that they lamped it straight into the full forward line. I said, Jesus Christ, they're changing it up here. They're gonna, and it was straight back to the running game, and it's so effective. Run as hard as you can when there's space, and if that space is taken away, right, reset and go through your slow attack, and they're effective in both.
Yeah.
So that boils down to possession in both cases. So fight them on possession as much as you can.
Well, so can I extend that point for a second? Because I was wondering if you're Brennan and he's what he's said there publicly, you can kind of times two that behind the scenes, and he's thinking to himself, these have athletes I can't compete with. They're like frightening across 70 minutes. So to your point about possession, Tomás, it's very interesting for me because their success has been built on, a north-south game, direct, kick pass, try and score early in the move. But obviously that means there'll be a lot of turnover of possessions one way or another. Would Brennan kind of think to himself, like, we don't want a frantic up and down game for 70 minutes. We're going to get the ball. They're not going to press us overly. They drop. Do we just keep ball for, remember like Roscommon did it against Dublin to keep the ball for 6 minutes at a time? Do we almost like take little timeouts in this game so that we're not overrun in this up and down game all day? Like, get the ball, fellas. Let's keep it. Let's keep it for 4 or 5 minutes. Let's make everyone fall asleep if we have to, and just pick our moments in a game. I'm half wondering would he think that, because I do think if they get into an up and down game with Donegal, which is how they've played and how Donegal are happy to play, like last 15 minutes, you'll just see Meath lads really struggling to keep pace. So what about that one?
The only thing I would say at that, yeah, I would say 100% an option. But if one team is sitting back and another team is sitting back and taking their time, I think Donegal are just better at that than Meath are. And ultimately, grand if you do it if your plan is to do it for a certain amount of time and then change it up and go at it.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult for a team in 2 weeks to change the way they've been trying to play, I suppose, all year. And I suppose, look, teams are able to shake it up. And I think I'd agree with you, Joe. I don't think Meath can go at it 100%, fly on, push up, go after them at all times for 70 minutes. I don't think that at all. But they need to find some way of winning more possession than Donegal, basically.
And they've been good at, Conor, that's kind of been like the Dublin win, the Kerry win, the Cork win, the Galway win. By the way,
Yeah.
Meath, I appreciate Meath, the listeners going, you're writing us off again. But like generally, they've got the best things in midfield.
Yeah. Just one thing on the Donegal running game, right? Because I was watching them the last day, and I honestly at one stage thought to myself, there mustn't be any fast lads left in Donegal. McGuinness has literally rounded up every single one of them and turned them into a footballer. Like from Finbar Rorty, Patter Morgan, Ryan McHugh, Kieran Moore, like even Michael Langan getting forward from midfield. They just have wheels and wheels and wheels and wheels. Now, Sunday is going to be 30 degrees of heat.
It's a great point, Jim.
So it's going to sap something here. So back to your point, if Donegal have to run the ball, they're going to feel that in their legs at some stage. Otherwise, they're the most supremely conditioned human beings ever to grace Croke Park. And if Meath are trying to follow them up and down the pitch, they will fatigue much, much earlier. So I think Meath are going to have to take that into account because, like on days like that, it's just going to sap it out of you. It doesn't matter how good an athlete you are. It doesn't matter how much heart you have. It doesn't matter how well conditioned you are. At some stage, you're going to tire. But the Meath thing is really interesting because we're all trying to figure out who these fellas are. All of us. Like that's a fact. I think in the media sometimes we get a little bit embarrassed when a team becomes very prominent who haven't been, and you have to pretend, oh well, I knew about Kieran Caulfield all along, or I knew about whoever it is.
I did not know about the Jordan Morris dummy solo bounce
That was
until the last time I saw him play. So hands up.
But that was the thing. Like if you watch all of Meade's big scores this year, they're okay. They've long range kickers who are good for 2-pointers when the opposition get back in that kind of slow phase ball. But really, they're at their best when they have the opposition scrambling.
Yeah.
So the goals that they opened up, Morris's goal, the Matthew Costello hand pass for that final goal where he drew the keeper in and then shifted it off without giving him the eyes even.
Yeah.
Meath have a lot of guys who are really comfortable kicking the ball forward, moving it forward, and kind of building on the energy of that. But it's really interesting because Tomás said this is the same team that was very abject for the last few years. Like there's a couple of younger players and their natural trajectory was they were going to get better. So the squad as a whole was going to get better. But it's a remarkable job that they've done, particularly when you include the fact that they lost 2 of their selectors halfway through the year when after a league when they didn't even get promoted. So what they've done is nothing short of a kind of a revelation. What's going to be really interesting because like spoiler alert, I don't back them to beat Donegal this weekend. I think Donegal are exceptional. But what's going to be really interesting is to see what they do next because we have seen teams before who've been flash in the pans that they've kind of performed at a level and then fallen back. But if this is representative of Meath, in the way that they attacked the game against Galway, in the way that they seized an opportunity against Dublin that maybe even they didn't believe they were going to have, then they're going to be a force again.
Yeah. Who was it kicked the winner against Mayo, last minute up the touchline?
Rory Kinsella.
I can't remember who it was. It was one of them. They're just one of their many, can run the 400 metres in Olympian time types. It's frightening. And Michael Lanigan's goal. There was that quarterfinal weekend. There were an awful lot of shots.
Oh, sorry, you're talking about Potter Mogan.
Potter Mogan, yeah, it was Mogan against Mayo. Yeah, on Lanigan's goal.
No, it wasn't. It was Kieran Moore.
There you go. That proves the point. Could have been a few of them. On Lanigan's goal, that quarterfinal weekend, maybe just the new rules, or maybe you're noticing it more. There were a lot of goal chances. I would have said the standard of finishing was not good. An awful lot of shots are quote unquote a lovely height for a keeper. So his goal kind of caught the eye as a rare, brilliant finish.
Oh, what a finish!
Yeah,
it was a brilliant finish.
He's proper.
Yeah, but I think that's what Donegal do to you too. This goes back to the old thing of you only have 12 players now defending because of the rules. If you want to put pressure on the 2-point shooters outside the arc, when somebody makes a run from deep and they create an overload or an extra man in that zone, you're going to have people bombing through the middle and to open up goal chances. So, this is the test case for all these rules. And maybe ultimately after this weekend and the final, we'll all conclude that the best way to defend is to defend deep inside and just write off 3 or 4 2-pointers as collateral damage, that it's actually the lesser of 2 evils.
We'll score a few, you score a
few.
Yeah. Tomás, we're kind of skirting around here. Really, just you would struggle to make an argument against Meath because Donegal are so good. Like that, we can talk about this game for another hour, but that's where we are.
Yeah, and I see it's a strange. I don't know. Just looking at papers, looking at social media, I see people giving Meath more of a chance than I do against Donegal than Tyrone against Kerry, which is strange.
Right.
I think Meath. It's not that people are purposely disrespecting them. It's just that they weren't on anybody's radar at all coming into this championship. I think Donegal probably with the likes of McBrearty and McHugh and McGee and Brennan, they probably have a better bench. McBrearty in particular did well when he came in against Monaghan. And I know Meath, even the lads said that the Kerry lads were at pains to point out that they still have injuries as well. You have Jack Flynn, you have Ronan James, you have young Kinlock. They're missing players as well. So I don't think they have the strength and depth of Donegal. I do think, like I always listen to managers. They won't want to say or give any much information after matches, but listening to McGuinness, you can tell gets cranky when they're dropping balls short or they're giving simple hand passes away. Like for the game they play, and it looks simple, the accuracy, the handling, the skill set is very good, as well as their athleticism. With the players that they have, it is hard to bet against them, Joe. I'd go with Donegal. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see Donegal coming through. I just think that they'll shut Meath down early. I don't think they'll want Meath to believe that they have a chance and to allow them have more confidence as the game goes. So I think Donegal will start off patient enough, but just make sure that Meath don't have an impact on the game early on. And if they can counter attack then and frustrate Meath bit by bit. But the new rules, lads, you have to give Meath credit, right? I thought, Christ, Donegal or Galway are going to reply here at some stage, which they did, and they did it in such a way with the goal and everything that you thought, right, they'll put the gas down here now and they'll physically. They didn't. Conor Gray came in. Meath came back into it. They took their goal well. They took their scores. They kept creating chances. So they have character. They won't back off Donegal. So no matter like this, if Donegal go well ahead early, it's a dangerous game. You would want to have a 60, 70-minute performance to get rid of them, but I'd still go Donegal.
Yeah, I think what makes Donegal just so dangerous as well is that all that pace coming from the back. So if you want to sit off that, that's fine. But then when they get it to the edge of the D, they have so many players that when they shift it, they're really comfortable to just go outside or go inside and have a small bit of space. Niall O'Donnell and Shane O'Donnell, two fellas the last day, I don't know how many times they just sized up their man. They said, right, this is the one, and they're very comfortable kicking on the run at full pace. They don't have to have a big, they're not announcing the shot. There's no big backlift. They don't need space. They don't need, a big circumference around them. That's the most important player nearly in Gaelic football now at the moment, because everybody is defending either right behind the arc or slightly in front of the arc. But generally, unless you win the ball in a turnover or a long kick out that the opposition is pressed up on, you're attacking already a set defence. So they have loads of those players.
30-degree heat, that ball's going to travel. So, any update, by the way, on the jerseys? I had heard at the start of the week they were going to wear their
own
away jerseys, and now they have reverted back to home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
they showed two pictures of them. They're not too bad.
Not too
I'm
bad.
colourblind, and I'd say I'd be alright with it.
Yeah, I think the Donegal one is predominantly yellow these days, a bit of green on top. And the Meath one is more green. So maybe it's okay. You're colourblind, are you?
Yeah.
Would that have been an issue playing ever?
No,
Okay.
I can see all the colours. I just can't tell what they are.
Right, okay. So Wales-Ireland is often the one that gets held up as nightmare for colourblind people.
There'd be certain. I watch certain games. I just have to turn off the television because it'd be just so annoying.
Are you serious? Yeah.
Yeah, the Galway. If Galway are playing, say Galway Cork now, I wouldn't. I'd have a nightmare there.
Yeah. That's similar to Ireland-Wales, all right. Because the rugby have tried to change it or tried to do something because something about those colours.
Yeah, Ireland Wales. Yeah, similar. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez, I never knew that. That's mad. Although it's more common than you think, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Kieran McGeeney was saying, remember they wore their black jerseys for a couple of games. He said part of it came down to a couple of their players being colourblind. It was easier for them to distinguish.
Right. Okay.
Sure, I was on the television there a few weeks ago, and they put up red and green dots on the screen. I didn't know they were putting a picture, and I says, yeah, if you look at they put up yellow and green. I thought they were black and grey. I don't know, completely two wrong colours. Out anyway.
So
The man looked at me sideways.
You're thinking they missed it.
We had a row inside in the snooker hall one night. Myself and my brothers. Swear to Christ, nearly came to blows.
You and who? Sorry.
Myself and my brothers were inside in the snooker hall.
Alright.
What were we doing in the snooker hall? I don't know, but we nearly came to blows. We had to walk to the next table and ask a fellow, what colour is that?
Ah, Jesus. Well, who knew the best part of this podcast to be right at the end? Conor McKeon, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Tomás O'Shea, cheers. Talk to you
Thanks,
next week.
lads.
Good luck.
Thanks a million.